Hello, everyone. Dr. Frankie Bashan here for another episode of Love, Laughs, and Lessons. And we are deep into our Matchmaker series. And I'm super excited to introduce an amazing matchmaker that's been on the scene for years and helped me to feel not so alone early on in my career as a professional matchmaker. So thrilled to have her on. But before we introduce her, for those folks who are unfamiliar about me, I'm a clinical psychologist, board certified sex therapist, and the CEO of Little Gay Book Matchmaking and Little Black Book Matchmaking. And I have an amazing co-host who will introduce herself right now.
Yes, hello again, everyone. Glad to see you, meet you, hear you, or you're hearing us, rather. Again, I'm Denise. I'm a certified matchmaker and relationship coach. I'm working with Dr. Frankie Bashan at Little Gay Book. And yes, as Dr. Frankie said, we are so honored to have Matchmaker Maria. She is the GOAT in matchmaking. She is the go-to for all of the matchmakers. And also, many clients. She's the heart and brain behind Agape Matchmaking, with over a decade of experience in matchmaking and making love happen. Maria is fourth generation matchmaker, blending traditional matchmaking with modern relationship psychology, and her search techniques for her clients are renowned. Everyone knows Matchmaker Maria. We are so happy to have her here, and we want to hear all about her experience, how she began matchmaking. And Maria, we just want you to drop some gems. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
so happy to have you here. So Maria, when did you start? Because I remember being so thrilled that you were out there in 2009 when I started. When did you start
Yeah,
your
that
cafe?
was around, it was around then actually. So, um, it's funny because I've always been matching my whole life. Like I remember my first match was in kindergarten, um, between these two people named Garrett and Haley. And I remember being on the schoolyard and Garrett saying, I like Haley. And then I ran over to Haley. I was like, Garrett likes you. And Haley's like, well, I like him back. So I ran over back to Garrett, which I'm sure, like, as an adult, if I'm looking at this, I was probably running like 8 feet, but to a 5-year-old, this was like clear across the yard, And I went to him, and I was like, she likes you. And he's like, well, does she want to be my girlfriend? And I'm running back. So I'm kind of like brokering this kindergarten relationship, which lasted, I think they broke up at prom. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
high school?
Yeah. They did it for a long time, but I think in general, like when I look back, I started my business really young. I was a baby. I was like 23, 24 when I started my business. But there were signs for sure. Like in high school, I was the person that would have parties at her house. And I went to high school the summer after what is that movie? Oh shoot, I forget
16
it.
candles?
No, I'm not that
Love.
old. Um,
Oh,
no, I'm not. I was born in 84. I think that movie came out in
I'm
84.
old, Maria. I'm old.
Oh my gosh.
I forget what the name of it, but there was a movie where it was about a house party, but like I would always have the parties in my house. And what's funny about that is that all the parties in my house, none of them, first of all, there was always a parent present, and none of them had alcohol. And it's not like my mom was like Amy Poehler in Mean Girls, like, I'm a cool mom. Like, no, my mom is like former Air Force. Like, she was like a Greek immigrant mom. But the difference was that, like, my mom, like, I said it to you straight, there's no passive aggressiveness here talking to a kid. And so I think all of my friends felt like my house was a safe place to be at. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and even people that weren't my friends, like straight up people that I was like, are we friends, or do you just like my mom because she's providing you a safe space to just like be yourself? So, and it was not innocuous. There's nothing like sexual about what I'm saying. It was just like, you know, I don't know.
Different
I'm
times.
just different
Yeah.
times. And
Yeah.
there was always like food available, and the apple juice is there. And it's funny because like now I take care of my parents and I'm in charge of their finances, and I see how much they made then. And I'm like, wow, we were like lower middle class. Like, how are we affording people over? Like, how are we doing this? But my parents' house was always open. And as long as we left it how we found it, I could always have parties. So shoot, every weekend in high school, people were over my house, and hey, the next day, like, seven of my girlfriends would always sleep over. We'd always have sleeping bags,
Oh
all that
my
stuff.
gosh, so fun.
And then the next day, because that's when my parents had a carpeted downstairs, we
Uh-huh.
would be there scrubbing all the stains out because we wanted a party the next week again.
That's
So
right.
yeah, like, so my parents were like, it's funny because all these things happened when my dad was away. Like, oh, I'm here with my friends. It's like everyone needs to be out of here before my dad gets home because my dad's like a Greek dad. It's like no people over. So yeah, there was like these signs, or it's like I was very good at congregating people together. And then in college, I went to a college in Europe. And there, in Europe, they don't play with their alcohol, they just drink it. I say this because when I moved back, I didn't know this, by the way. When I moved back at 23, when I moved back to the States, that's when I learned what beer pong was. And I felt like, what is, because that happened while I was away. Like there's certain things that I missed out on in those 5 years I had started while I was away, like
Right.
the Kardashians, like The Apprentice, like beer pong.
Yes.
And so when I came back, I was like, what do you got? Why? You're drinking that too? Like, ew, so anyway, so yeah, same thing in college. I was one of the few people who had their own apartment. Everyone else lived with their parents because in Europe that's more typical. And so people would always be over my house and I'd be having like wine and cheese parties and like, let's play a round of Pictionary or whatever. Again, nothing like no one's hosting a sex party here. Nothing, you know, below the belt, right? It was just like a place where
Right.
people could always hang out and meet. And a lot of people, because they're meeting through friends, this is a time before smartphones existed. Um, people were getting those connections, that third space time, that social, quality time. And they were dating people. So a lot of my friends dated a lot of my other friends.
So
Yeah.
it's
So
like me, it was a
matchmaker.
calling. Like people ask me, how did you decide to become a matchmaker? I didn't, it
I
chose
don't think you ever get to decide to do
me.
this. I think just one day, I remember the day it happened. Like I remember the day where I was in grad school now. So I had a corporate job. This is now back in 2008, 2009. I had a corporate job and I was helping my friends. Like I was setting up my friends with strangers. Um, and um, one day I'm just talking to one of my classmates in grad school. It was like, it must have been October. It was like right before Halloween. And it was October 2009. He's like, just start a business. Like, what are you doing? Like, we're in grad school now, and I'm the generation where, you're still expected to finish school, even if it's not working for you. Like,
Mhm.
it's funny because now I think about college and it's like, well, there's way more information now about what to do with these degrees. And then there wasn't enough information. So I feel like I made some decisions without having a whole picture of what's happening. This is also, I started grad school the exact same week as the financial crisis kicked off. Because I started in September 2008. So it was just very it was interesting. And I remember that night, I remember my classmate was like, just start a business. And I was like, okay. And at the time, how do you start a business? You go on Twitter and you start a Twitter handle and see, okay, does anyone think this is interesting? And then the next day I went to the library to pick up like how to start a business, which is stupid. Like I could have just Googled it, but I didn't know any better. And then 2 days later, I found myself at this small business, like downtown where you could register your business. Now you could do this online, but I went physically to register in a corporation. And then that was it. Now I had to create a website. Like now I had to,
Did you do
if
the
they
whole
build it, you will come.
To do this
business
thing.
plan? Did you come up like I remember them telling me you have to do a business plan and I was like, oh no, this doesn't.
You
Yeah.
know, man, these are, it's funny. I've done 1,000 interviews. No one's ever asked me that question. I love that. I did not do a business plan. I had a bachelor's in business administration.
Mhm.
I was pursuing a master's in global affairs. And it's funny because since then I've started other businesses that have also done really well. And in fact, right now, one of my businesses, I'm assigning a new CEO to it. And yesterday we were having a conversation. She was like, well, let's look at the business plan. I go, no, no, no. Like my plan is this. Like, I don't, these little
What's
matrix
with the
drawings that
business
everyone's
plan?
making, my brain does not process information this way.
No.
Right. Instead, we're going to make a marketing plan. That's what I do. Forget your business
That's the
plan. You're going to make a marketing plan. And if
Yeah.
you can't follow this. And then, so what I always do whenever I start a business, including the copy match, including my first business, my matchmaking business, I start off with a marketing plan. And I also have an Excel sheet, and I use that as like a calculator. So I spell out, okay, here's all my fixed costs. Here's all my variable costs. Here's a buffer. Here's what I'm going to need to live. If I had no business for this many months, I didn't do that then, but now I do that. So I think about like, here's what it costs, not only to run a business, but to also be me. How
Yeah.
much do I need to charge? So I was kind of like reverse. These are things you learn now, but like at that time I was started with a marketing plan. It's funny because actually I just thinking about this, Agape Match is not my first business. My first business was when I was living in Europe. I was living in Athens, Greece, and I needed a job because my parents, when I moved to Athens, I wasn't going, there's 5 American schools in Europe. I went to one of them called the American College of Greece, great school. And I was on the debate team program.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, right. And then after, like, my parents said, like, school was like pretty affordable because I had a scholarship and all that stuff, right? So my parents were basically paying room and board, and my parents said to me, we're going to be sending you $1,000 a month and you're just going to have to figure it out. Well, the problem with that is that at that time, it's not like it's now $1.06, it was $1.40, the exchange rate.
Yeah.
So I was only getting back 600 euros. You cannot live when like rents were 400. You cannot live on 600. So I was like, I need a job. And it's funny because like all of in Greece and in general, I think in Southern Europe, the Balkans, when you're a college student, that is considered your full-time job. You're not supposed, that's why when you go to like a McDonald's, or in Greece, it's a Goodies, it's like the Greek version of fast food. You will see people that are 35, 50 years, like that's their full-time job. They get a good salary, they get health benefits, the whole thing. Like these are considered proper careers. There is no like, teenage hustle. So, at 18, I started a business teaching. I went and I got certified. I went and got all the books to teach English to children whose parents want them to have an American accent.
Oh.
Because when they learn it from a Greek person, they're going to learn how to speak Greek with this accent. If you speak to my husband, when he talks, he speaks with the Greeks say every single syllable. You should, next time you meet a Greek person, ask them to read the word Connecticut to you. They will say every single syllable. So if there are parents who don't want that, they could hire me and I would do that. And the going rate then to teach English private lessons used to be €5 an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, well, that's not going to cut it because I can only do 2 times a week, 6 hours. Like I was like thinking like, how much is it going to cost? How much money do I need? And I was like, I kind of need 400 euros. So how many hours, how many kids? So I started again, this is my first marketing plan, no sheets, no PowerPoint, right? I'm doing this on paper because 2003. Right. And I made a marketing plan. I was like, okay, who are my people? Who's the demo here? It's going to probably be parents who probably got their bachelor's degrees in America or in London. So they understand dialect. It's going to be people who probably are fully employed and have good jobs. And I was like, well, where do these people live? So I was like, they probably live in this neighborhood, in this neighborhood, in this neighborhood. And okay, is there a local paper that they read there? Okay, they probably might read this paper because that's how things, if you're looking for something, that's how you would look it up then, Right. Then at the same time, the paper called Avgitidis, they became digital. So I was like, oh, if I post it on the thing, they'll also post it online. And I specifically, even though I didn't live in those neighborhoods, I lived 20 minutes away. I wrote, in these 2 towns, there is an American speaker who can do English lessons. And I put €15 an hour. And I got 4 families.
Wow.
And I was packed for 4 years. That was my first business. I never had to look for parents again because once one kid left, another parent was like, oh, hire Maria. So like I always had like my little network. One kid I had for 5 years. He just graduated from Oxford University with a law degree. So it was interesting to like, that was my first experience. So then when I was 23, when I left, I sold that business to my best friend so that she could take it over. But then, I had learned something, right, from that interaction. I was juggling, I graduated with a good GPA. I had debating, all that stuff. Like I had hobbies, I had boyfriends, I had parties, but I also was the only kid in my entire class that I'm aware of that was working. No, there was one other girl. There were two of us that were working in our entire class. And I think that set us apart when it came for jobs. I started working at the American Embassy, the US Embassy in Athens before I moved back to America. And so, yeah, to go back to your original question, did I start a business plan? No, my business plan was a marketing plan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah,
I started
it's crazy.
backwards also. It didn't make any sense to me to the steps of a formal business plan. I'm like, this is not, my brain is not wired this way. And, you know, I mean, you don't have to do, there's not one way. The point is there's not one way to do things.
I've also failed. I have had two businesses fail upon launch. Like, you know, this build it, you will come mentality doesn't always work because most people don't know how to find you, or they don't know that they need you. Like, I started off calling myself Maria, the date coach, not Matchmaker Maria. And the truth is, and I can see this, like, date coaching is a massive product for Agape Match, right? That's one of our most popular programs among straight women, gay women. And, you know, to see that no one's looking for a dating coach, though, what they're doing is they're looking for a matchmaker. So it's like, oh, I'm calling myself the wrong, like, I clearly have a matchmaking business. I was calling myself something else to help you, but you don't care. You're not searching for this. Now, if I use the traditional business plan, you're not going to learn that.
Not at all. Yeah.
So Maria, this entrepreneurial spirit, where'd you get that from? You're just
my dad's entire family. My dad used to have a small business as well. He's like a car mechanic, an honest car mechanic. Remember I said we're lower middle class. That's why. And my dad's siblings, he's the youngest of 9, 7, which were living until adulthood. I would say all of them either were small business owners or married to an entrepreneur. So my dad's side of the family, like, they understand like risk. And it's funny because my husband's family, they're all school teachers, and, you know, these are public civil servants, and they don't understand my life. Like, they're very, like, my dad's family is very supportive from day one. They're like, of course you're going to have your own business. And my husband's family's like, why don't you, I remember my mother-in-law saying, why don't you go back to school, get a PhD and teach business? And I was like, that's not what I want to do.
like a reliable paycheck. It's predictable.
Yeah. They don't
security,
get it.
right?
And in Greece, it's, oh, look, I get it. In Greece, especially, you know, the good thing with being a public servant is that if it rains, if it hits, this is what they say it in Greek. It's the Greek saying is "na chionisi na halasi." So if it rains, if it hails, you still have a paycheck. You know, because they don't have tornadoes and hurricanes and to them, hail is a big thing. And you know, that was, you know, you understand what I'm saying?
I want to live there.
Yeah. It's winter now. If you go, and it's funny because people keep messaging me like, oh my God, I just got great tickets to go to Greece next week. And I'm like, it's 30 degrees. Good, have fun.
Yeah, no thanks.
Fahrenheit, not Celsius.
That's fun.
Like,
yeah.
It's windy. The islands you plan to go to are closed. But yeah, so, but you know, I think those, look, as a matchmaker too, I think learning how to think like this, I think it can also make you very good at recruiting. You know, like, ultimately what I think our clients hire us for is to provide some social support in expanding their network through our own network, but also give them the feedback that they might need to expand their social capital, for instance, right? And I think when you're entrepreneurial, just because some entrepreneurs might want to be as efficient as possible and optimize as possible, I think they can be very good at learning recruitment methodologies. Like, for instance, my father, I mentioned, was a car mechanic. I don't know anything about what he did, but I want to imagine that if he needed like a muffler, he's not just like going to mufflers.com to look for a muffler.
That's right.
He's going to like talk to his network, like, hey, you've got a muffler down the street laying around. Can I get it? By the way, I know nothing about cars. Don't car cancel me. I might be saying the wrong words. What I'm saying is that my dad, who you know, just learned how to use a smartphone, he's not going to mufflers.com to get a muffler. He's doing other things. And I think that's something that small business owners or entrepreneurial people, they can be very good at.
Yeah, more resourceful for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
I think
Yeah.
they can be their own worst matchmaker though, too.
In what way?
It's kind of like if they don't, I don't mean matchmakers being their own worst matchmakers. I'm talking about like real single people. They
Mm-hmm.
can do a really terrible job at matchmaking themselves, especially small entrepreneurial people, because they feel like, I have noticed, and you can let me know if you have this experience too. Whenever I meet someone who describes themselves as entrepreneurial or hustling or small business owner or whatever, they're saying stuff like, well, I want someone who gets me. And the only way they're going to get me is if they also have a small business. If you don't have a small business, or if you don't have a business, you're never going to get my life. And I'm kind of like, for me personally, as a professionally, even as a matchmaker, if you tell me you own a business, I will never set you up with another business owner. I'm going to
Yeah.
say it with someone who has the most stable career ever with really good health insurance, because that's what's lacking in your life. You can, entrepreneurial people are special. Let them be the rainbow in the relationship. We don't need double rainbows.
That's right.
So
Let
I
them
thought you
fly
meant
high and give them that anchor, right? So
Yeah, that pot
they
of
can,
gold anchored
I
in the
that's
thought
right.
you
ground.
meant that us matchmakers are terrible at matching ourselves.
No, I don't think
And I
so.
and I feel I was gonna say it's like the potter who uses broken pottery, or the shoemaker that has like holes in his shoes, For years I
Listen,
was
just
single.
because you're in a relationship doesn't mean you're in a good relationship.
That's true.
That's right.
And
Right.
I think it's unfair to judge matchmakers and dating coaches like that. Um, because I'd rather you be happy, and happiness can certainly take different forms. I think what makes a really good matchmaker and dating coach is helping their clients find success.
Yeah.
So, if you're good at your job, I don't know if that might necessarily, like, I don't know how it translates to your personal well-being. It also has to do with, your opportunities and you getting
And
out of
what you
your own
want.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. Maria, what services do you offer?
So we obviously have matchmaking. We tend to take straight men as clients. We used to take the whole spectrum, um, a very long time ago. Um, at some point we realized the emotional bandwidth of my team is more suited for straight men. We did find partners though in the industry to take on the people that want to hire us. So we have a few partners for straight women who, if you're a straight woman who wants to hire a matchmaker, not just be part of, Agape Match's free database,
Mhm.
you would have a phone call with us, and then we'll refer you to the right matchmaker in your region or in your niche. Similarly, if someone is gay, lesbian, trans, whatever letter of the alphabet that they might identify with, we again would have that phone call with you and then refer you to the correct, the more appropriate partner
Mhm.
for your goals. And so that matchmaking is obviously a core product. We also have coaching programs. The big one's Agape Intensive, which is a 3-day boot camp virtually. We also do it a couple times in person. We have one in person happening in March in New York. And then
Pretty
we
cool.
have Agape Escapes, and that's like our new shiny product the last 3 years. I don't know if you realize, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but every person that I talk to, they, especially in the pandemic, it was like they had nothing to hope for. So in 2020, we're like, okay, we're going to put a deposit. We put a massive deposit. We put a $100,000 deposit on a group trip to Greece for
Oh, wow.
2022. And we're like, listen, whoever wants to come can join us if they've
Mhm.
done one of our programs, usually the Agape Intensive, and you can come with us on this trip. It's 2 years from now. But now you have something to look forward to. We did this before even a vaccine was talked about,
Yeah. Yeah.
before
Wow,
even
what a risk. Talk about a
it's
risk
a
taker.
massive risk. But I was like, the government's got 2 years to get it together.
To get
Like,
it together. But what foresight also, though, a big risk, but you've got to have that vision. And I think
holy
that you
smokes.
have that vision And yeah,
And it's
that's
grown since then.
crazy.
Now we have like multiple, we call them escapes because it's part of the Agape Escapes program. And now we have multiple. It was such a hit. I thought they will just do it one and done. Nope. Had to LLC that company. And now we have multiple escapes happening a
Where?
year. We have 2 coming up in Greece, one the last week of June and another one the first week of July. There's a couple spots left if anyone's interested in coming to Greece with me. And then I think we have a men's trip in the fall, which we'll be announcing soon. We have probably another one. We just have a few happening in 2025. Our plan is to have like 15. So there's going to be constant escapes. And then you can also, like, I don't have to attend all of them. You can host your own escape or be a part of a pre-planned escape. But this is a way, what we've noticed, what happens, like 30, and like in most cases 30 women show up and you have access to the whole Agape team on certain escapes, which is great. But we also bring a photographer, and we've planned a 5-star itinerary from every excursion to the hotels that we stay at. But also we get rid of every opportunity for a friendship paper cut. So because all the meals are pre-negotiated, pre-planned, and pre-paid for, you don't have that opportunity where it's like, well, I had a glass of wine and she had a whole fish. Like that, these little things don't happen. And it really does give you the space to make your 30 new best friends, people that live all across the country and in Canada. And, you know, since then, there's every weekend, there is no shortage of reunions happening with all of our graduates. Like this weekend, I'm actually joining some of my graduates to go see a comedian perform in New York City. So there's always something happening.
You have to be a graduate. Just, I want to be clear. You got to be a graduate.
For certain escapes you do, for others you don't. So it just depends on which escape it is.
And on average, about 30 people attend.
Yeah. So some of them are 30, some of them are 20.
Okay. Denise,
and they're all singles?
Nope. Some people are already in relationships. So
this is just community.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, don't you feel like as matchmakers, we have a calling to just introduce people to other people? Like it doesn't have to be, you know, romantic. Aristotle said that agape, which is the name of my company, that agape is the soul's recognition of another soul. That doesn't mean that it has to only be love. Like I think we are provided multiple soulmates in our lives, right? Your children are your soulmates.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't know. Denise, do you have children?
4.
You have 4
and
children?
Grandchildren and grandchildren.
So like one of the worst games that I hate when people say, like, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you say? Just the question upsets me because God forbid I change anything. What happens if I don't get the same kids? I can't even. And when I look back at photos of myself, like, oh, I wish I could just go back and live this life just for 24 hours. I don't think that, because those 24 hours, I would miss my kids so much that the idea of them not being on the planet Earth with me would kill me. So,
you wouldn't change a thing.
I could not change a thing.
You could, absolutely.
Not maybe after they've been born, maybe I'd change a few things. Because now, like, okay, they exist. The same sperm and same ovum were used.
That's right. At that time, in that moment, that's right. Yeah.
And that's literally the plot line of About Time, which is like a British movie with Rachel McAdams and this guy with red hair. I forget his name. His name's probably Colin, of course. But that is literally the plot line of that, because he goes back in time and he hit the exact sperm, doesn't hit the ovum, and now he's given a different kid. And I'm like, yeah, like that's my biggest fear.
That's deep. That is so deep. Yeah.
So Yanni is kind of famous.
My son, yeah. Is he famous? I think
oh my God, he warms my heart whenever.
I'm noticing.
Tell us about Yanni. I don't know this. I'm sure our listeners don't know this.
I don't think he's going to be a matchmaker, but
I was going to ask you. That was going to be my next question. Are they going to get into the business?
My sister is also a matchmaker and she works with me, and I think we both believe that like the generational matchmaking ends with us. Because you know,
I hope not.
It's so stressful being a matchmaker. I don't know if I want my kids to do this.
People have no idea, right?
They
will do it differently though than you, because you've already mastered that stress, and so you'd guide them differently.
It's not that. It's like You know what? If my kids asked me for advice, I'd be like, just do coaching. Don't even. Matchmaking is so hard. Like just
Well,
now,
what
I set
say
up
it?
a
What is
client
it?
yesterday and he's
Yeah.
like, ugh. And then the woman's like, best date ever. And I'm like, what? You
What?
know, like I just get really upset because now I have
Totally.
to like, what do you mean, ugh? You know, and why, ugh? So, I it's really hard sometimes working with people. It's really hard being a matchmaker. I think with coaching, what I love is like you gave all these resources and now you get to root for them.
Yeah.
And with
You see
matchmaking,
those
it's like
breakthroughs.
it's very much a job. Like my heart's in it, don't get me wrong, but like it's really not rewarding until it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it
if it
takes a
is.
lot, and it
And it
takes
takes
a
a
lot.
lot of work. It takes a lot of emotional bandwidth. So yeah, but to go back, yeah, my son is becoming a little famous. I'm not, for those who don't know me, I'm not a family blogger at all, not even in the sense of the word. But sometimes, especially around Christmas, when I open up my annual advent calendar, he will join me on some of those videos. And he's a very charismatic kindergartner.
He loves it. You can tell he is a
Yeah,
total
he's a
match.
Really?
natural.
He's a star,
He's a
huh?
Yeah.
Or
star.
yeah.
He is a star.
And I
He
just
keeps
think it's
asking for
great.
his own YouTube channel, and I'm like, but he doesn't. And I was like, what do you want to do on YouTube? Like, I don't understand what you want to do. And he's like, I just want to play Roblox. And I was like, oh, so you don't want to show your face. You just want to show your screen. And he's like, yeah. And I want to like talk over it. And I was like, let me
Oh,
think about it. Like,
okay.
I was like, if you start making money, what are you gonna do with that money? He's like, I'm going to help you buy a house. And I'm like,
Oh my
He's so
goodness.
sweet.
he's the
Yes.
He's so
sweetest. I
sweet.
feel so blessed. He won a spiral kit at a dance where there's like a silent auction and he got a spiral kit. You know, those things that we play with the spirals, pens, make
Yes.
a
Oh
little
yeah. Those are
tracers
old
and the
school.
Oh
gears.
yeah, that's old school. The circle and the circle and the
Yeah,
yeah.
we've been doing a lot of old school things this year. And so he got one of those. He's been playing with it all week. And then he went downstairs to my mother. And he tells my mom, I'm gonna get really good at this, and then I'm gonna start selling these. So, and my mom is like, what are you gonna do with the money that when you sell your little drawings? And he's like, I'm gonna give it to mom and dad so they can buy a house. Because we told
I
him like the
can't.
market's a little
I,
off, like we can't afford the houses in our neighborhood anymore. So anyway, so we talked about it. We made like a little marketing plan. And
here we
we've agreed
go.
that when he
Oh,
starts making them, they're going to be one for 25 cents, four for $1.
businessman in the making.
And then I said, you're not going to go to people. And he's like, who would buy it? And I was like, you're going to go to our neighbor, Karen, because she doesn't have kids. She has kids, but they're grown. I was like, don't go to houses with people who have young kids because they don't want your garbage. That's literally how I said it word for word.
Poor
Um,
Yanni. He's like,
and
wait,
that is, I
what?
wasn't saying it like, oh, your spiral drawings are garbage. I think he understood what I meant by that. I want to believe
Yeah,
it because he was just like, oh, yeah, okay. And I was like, all right, like, you got it, kid. And then I was
he
like,
definitely understands. Yeah.
Just think about all the people that look old to you, like you're gonna sell to them because they're dying for stuff like this. And then my husband, he's like, let's get a laminator. And I was just like, wow, this is becoming
A thing.
a thing.
And so you followed your idea, it sounds like, even for your clients, that you wouldn't match them with another entrepreneur, that because your husband is a science, isn't he a professor?
Used to be in academia. Now he works in big pharma. He's a principal scientist. I'm really proud of him. He's really smart. He's a
Nice.
scientist.
That's
He's an
awesome.
engineer with a PhD. Um, and yeah, he's a comic book collector. He belongs to a backgammon club. Like we are very different on the surface. He's introverted. I'm the most extroverted person you've ever met. Um, but I think what makes us super duper compatible is that we have the near probably identical moral compass. We have very similar critical thinking skills. And we parent the same, we communicate similar, complementary.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we value are identical. So, you know, like for instance, we really value community. We really
Mm-hmm.
value family. We really
Mm-hmm.
value when government works well, or like public services work well. Like I know, like for instance, we on Sunday we go to church, and then after church we'll usually go to the public library. That's like part of our routine. And I think both of those things show us like what we value. And it's not that we value our faith, because we have very different relationships with the same faith that we were both raised in. But I think we value the community that we have the privilege of being a part of that also shares our faith, which is very reminiscent of a lot of Greek communities in America. There's always like a community center attached. So, we get to see our people. We get to see like the people that we've grown up with. Like my sister lives in Greece. All of my cousins live in Greece. I don't have family here. I just have my parents. But the people that are at my church, they've known me since I was 3 years old. They're like cousins, similar to I am to them, right? They have family back in the motherland. So, you see like your village every week, and you have a support system. And, that was for me my only thing that saved me when my mom got really sick and she went into full care between me and my dad. I needed emotional support. Like this was like, I was really struggling, and this was in the pandemic. It was really tough. And, the people at my church, they really helped me, because to them, this was like their sister was,
That's right. Yeah.
So I felt like all these aunties, like I felt their love. I felt like I got enveloped around. Like every time I thought about how like, oh my God, my mom's probably going to die soon. And my daughter won't even have a memory of her. Like, all these things that I was thinking about. And then I was like, oh, but wait, she's got these 35 best friends.
Yeah.
They'll be my kid's proxy grandparent. But my mom is working. She's still kicking.
Good. She's okay.
Yay.
That speaks to the importance of community and a support system. Number one, most important thing.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like you're naming some of the things that you think are really important when considering a partner.
For sure.
1,000%. And I try to like explain this to people, even before they hire me, like, what you think is important might not be as important as you've thought that it is, especially when people start talking about like physical looks.
Oh my, don't even get me on this topic.
Taboo. Oh my gosh.
There's way
too much. I work with straight men, and you can't convince a straight man to go out with someone if they're not attracted to them. And it's so relative, right? Because like
totally,
I could set up a man with a 10 out of 10. Like this is a gorgeous woman. Like you cannot tell me this person's not gorgeous. Right. And some men, they're open to everything. Some men don't give a shit. They're like, I don't care about looks. Like I'm open. And then other men, I don't know what they're thinking about. They're so specific.
They have a prototype. They have a prototype. They have some men.
Yeah, but that doesn't. Okay. And then
they're going to stay
what,
single.
And then what? That's right.
And then what?
You have that.
I keep trying to tell my clients, like sometimes I'm like, for instance, I've had people tell me like, she can't be this profession. And I'm like, it's so funny that you just told me that they can't be this profession, when that is exactly the profession I would probably set you up with if you let me do my job.
Yeah.
So for instance, I had an entertainer who was saying to me that he would never date a school teacher. And I was like, to be honest, I think school teachers might be the best one for you, because they have off in the summers. So you can plan a life where, maybe you're away for like 3 or 4 months, but you get these 3 months where you can't work. You have to be with her. You get that quality time in there that you're never going to get with another partner.
You should talk to Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, there you go. Like, I'm sorry. How many men have said to me, oh, she has a kid, I'm not interested. Matt Damon's dating married for like 20 years to a single mom who's a bartender.
Yep, exactly. And I think, was she a school teacher too at some point? She might've been. That's what made me think of them.
His mom is a school teacher.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, like wow, why do I know so many factoids about Matt Damon?
I don't know. I was just thinking that. I was like, why does she know about his mom? But okay.
Great actor. Yeah.
You know why I know about his mom? Because whenever there's a teacher's protest, he's always at the front of the picket line supporting them, because it's like I've seen him multiple times support teachers and the unions. I think the things that matter, people forget like what matters. Like for instance, I'll also have people talk about money, and they'll say like they need to make this amount of money. And it's like, no, they really don't. What they need to have is a complementary relationship that you have to money and the lifestyle that you do, right? Because I have had friends marry people that, I don't know, have behavioral disorders, where even if they're making 4 million a year, somehow they're still spending 4 million a year.
Yeah.
that's a
5
lot of
million
money
a
to
year.
spend in
Yeah.
1 year, and
Yeah.
they have nothing to show for it. Like I remember one of my girlfriends, her and her ex-husband divorced. I think he was showing like 14 million a year. So I was like, what is your alimony? What's your child support? She's got 2 kids. And she's like, oh, I'm only getting 2,500 a month. And I'm like,
What happened there?
your lawyer sucks.
Didn't happen. Yeah.
But also it was because of his spending habits. He was spending money so radically that he could say he's making 14 million. He had nothing to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like
Scary
what
stuff.
someone makes, what someone's relationship, like I remember even watching those extreme, what is it, like, I forget what it's called. Not the opposite of people who are like cheapskates.
Oh,
Like
totally
there was this one
frugal.
woman who was making like 6 figures in some position, but she's also really cheap. So she would, for instance, because she's always on planes, she would always like steal like the peanuts.
No,
And then
stop
she'd
it.
bring all the peanuts home and put the peanuts in the thing. So she'd have all these peanuts instead of going to Walgreens and buying like a $6 can of peanuts.
Like
You know what I'm
rolling
saying?
rolling
Okay, that's
napkins for
not
your
sexy.
room.
Not sexy. For the record,
But do you
listeners.
know what
There
I'm
are
saying?
people
Like,
like that. Yeah,
there
I
are
do.
people like that. And
Yes,
also
for
people
sure.
I don't think people realize also like there are things you have to unlearn from your parents. One of the things that I had to unlearn from my
Mhm.
parents was
Good point.
I didn't learn shit about money because my parents were just trying to survive. And
That's right.
so I remember then being in college, not even college, in grad school, I was going to NYU. I'm surrounded by rich kids, which no hate to them. Good for them. That's great. You won a family lottery here, right? But I'm taking out student loans. They're not. And
Mhm.
that is also being used as a way to see, like, should I date you? Oh, you took out student loans. And then suddenly the conversation, like, I would never date you now. And it's class structure, right? We
Yeah.
do have a
Yeah.
class structure in this country. Other things that I've heard, for instance, like I grew up in a, I grew up in a really diverse town. I don't want to say predominantly anything because it's like 34% white, 34% black. And then in the rest is mixes like Indian, Colombian, and like Vietnamese. Like I grew up in Piscataway, New Jersey, very diverse town.
Mhm.
Great town. I live there right now. And I was also struggling when I would meet people at NYU where they had, like in Greece, most of my classmates, they've only been around Greek people because they're in Greece. It's a homogeneous society at the time, right?
Right.
But when I was in New York, I was like, oh, you have not one single black friend. Cool. Like, how does that happen? Like I was having a culture shock
Yeah.
moving back to my home country
Which is
in New
crazy
York.
sounding.
And I don't think
Right.
of New York as like New York. Because New York to me is just the city next to the house that I grew up. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think most people in New Jersey have this
Fascination with New York.
No, not at all. It's just
Idealized
like,
idea
all
of
right.
New York.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
idealized at all. Like I wish
Mhm.
I love asking people who come to New York, like, what did you think about when you first came? Like I love asking my dad, what did you think when you first came to New York? And he's like, the buildings. And I was like, I've never had that because I would come into the city once a week with my parents. So yeah, so anyway, so these things are, I wish people knew a little bit more about, like, one of the challenges that I like to give people is to think about 3 couples, real
Mm.
couples that you admire. And if you don't have any couples that you admire, you need to start making more friends with couples that you can admire, because
Absolutely.
just like divorce is contagious, love is also contagious. Respect is also contagious. Learning how to like a partner is also contagious.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that when I talk to the people that have good relationships, if you ask them what makes it good, it's mutual respect. It's each other having
Admiration.
independent lives that they bring back
That's
into
right.
the conversation each night. There's like all
Mhm.
these things, and it has nothing to do with money.
She's
It has nothing to
gorgeous
do with,
or money. That's
yeah,
right. She was rich or yeah. That's not the things that they're saying that make people compatible,
Yeah.
no,
especially
not
for
at all.
long-term successral relationships. Yeah.
Long-term compatible. If anyone ever talks about how like they weren't compatible because of money, it's always because they couldn't communicate about money.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do about like,
True.
oh, they made 200,000 and I made 80,000. I'm like,
That's
okay,
right.
yeah, why can't you make
They
it work at 280? Like, 'cause there's other people making it work at 80,
less.
like
That's
combined,
right. That's
you
right.
know?
So
So
Maria,
true.
tell
So true.
tell I know this is awesome, but we gotta wind down, and
Yeah.
I want folks to know how to find you. And
Oh, sure.
so tell us.
So first off, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love that this
Absolutely.
conversation went very different than I think most matchmaking conversations go. But I think there's a lot of lessons in here. I think there's a lot of good takeaways here.
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to find me, they can always follow me on Instagram at Matchmaker Maria. And if you visit the link in the bio there, there's all these ways that you can interact with me, right? You can join my free database. You can join me in Greece. You could be part of my, just be part of all this, or you can also listen to my podcast. I also have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday called Ask a Matchmaker.
And what do you talk
Nice.
about dating on there? What do you talk about?
We talk about dating, we talk about relationships, we talk about sex, we talk about money. We have hotline episodes where people call in live and get their questions answered with our special guests. Our guests range from comedians to psychology, clinical psychologists to journalists to entertainers. There's all,
Oh my gosh, fun.
like we had Marlo Thomas
Sounds
on
good.
once, and that was she was talking about like what makes marriages great, like how great marriage is, what's the secret, because she's been married to her husband for like a
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That girl.
That girl. Do you know how people don't know about that girl, by the way?
Which is crazy.
I was like, she's the original, like nothing, Mary Tyler Moore, Sex in the City, Girls, Broad City, all these shows, Shameless, none of these happen without that girl.
Yeah.
That girl.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Oh,
Maria, thank
wow.
you.
Thank
So
you so
awesome.
much. So
So
good.
much
Was
good
so
stuff.
good.
Yeah. And thank
Thank
you
you for having me.
all for listening in, and we will see you all next week. Hugs. This is
Bye.
bye, everyone.